Wait, are we live?
Yes, we are.
All right.
At least I hope so. I think we're live.
I have no idea. I've got the stream up, but I'm assuming there's a delay. So the first little bit, I apologize for not knowing if I was live or not. To the audience, how's it going? I'm Dave DuFour from the Athletic NBA Show. My man Samuel N is in my ear, and maybe he'll be in yours occasionally. He's producing this live stream. We just wanted to try to come up with something where we can hang out a little bit more instead of the formality of a podcast and some of the other videos we've been doing. So we kind of picked a perfect day, Sam, to sit down and do this because last night was one of the greatest scripted nights in NBA history, if you ask me, at least in the history that I've been covering in the league. Ja Morant comes back from a 25 game absence and looks like he hadn't missed a beat, right down to the game winning layup, cutting through traffic against a good defender in Herb Jones, just made him look like he wasn't even there. And, Sam texted me last night right after it happened. The conspiracy hat was on. And he just said, as soon as CJ McCollum missed that three, I knew Ja was getting a game winner out of this. Um, Prescient from Sam there, but Ja somehow he just stirred the drink just enough in the second half for Memphis to make him look like an actual basketball team, especially on the offensive end. Their half court offense has just been so painful to watch and not fun. And then all of a sudden, Ja Morant gets out there. I'm getting some feedback in my ear here, Sam. And then yeah,
What'd you say?
I said I was getting some feedback in my ear. I think it was my own voice coming back to me. Yeah, that half court offense has just been miserable. And last night they did a much better job of scoring. Did a much better job of scoring in the half court last night. One of the big problems that they've got is no Steven Adams, no Brandon Clark. And I found it pretty funny that Ja Morant's first bucket came off of an offensive rebound. So he already added a spark even there. You got to start wondering what's this team going to look like going forward. After the win last night, they're up to 7-19 on the season. If they had maybe been 10-16, 10-15 when Ja comes back, you think that they could make a move or two, maybe find a wing. Vince Williams Jr., who is great. Shout out to VCU, fellow Ram there. He's been pretty good. This is a two-way guy, and it's a spot that they have struggled to fill. This team is missing Dylan Brooks, which is kind of a crazy thing to say. But at 6-19, they've got to win at about like a 51 game, 50 game pace the rest of the way. And I just don't know if they're going to have the bodies to do it. Ja adds a lot to this team, but does that does that give them enough? I still think the Steven Adams absence in the middle is just an unfillable void for them. Bismack Biyombo doesn't do quite enough, especially on the offensive glass, which is really where they need it. If you look back, actually, this team has not had a great half court offense, even when Ja's been out there. We all know that throughout the years, Tyus Jones was seen as this guy who could step right in and fill in for Ja because they played just as well when Ja was out. But then we see a difference when you get into the playoffs and you really see where Ja's value in their offense comes from. But they still were reliant on offensive rebounding, and that's where no Steven Adams, the Brandon Clark Achilles injury last year, which hurt him last year, is killing them this year because they just don't have that athlete coming off the bench that can make things happen. And Jaren Jackson's never really been much of a rebounder. Part of that is, he's not committed to it. Yes, you can say that, but also it's just his style of play. He rotates out on defensive help often. I mean, this is part of the big problem with him and the foul trouble he gets into. He's a little too block happy. He wants to block a bunch of shots, and he's been rewarded for it. He's a very good defender this year. Kind of a drop off because he doesn't have the help on the interior that he's used to, but still pretty good defender. But he's away from the basket a lot, and on the offensive end, of course, we know, he stretches the floor. They just need some guys who can go and get a hand on a basketball. And if they'd been a little bit better without Ja in the run up to his return, there's an argument to be made that they could go get a piece. If they were 500, maybe you say, hey, this season is not lost. On Nerder, we've been calling it the gap year. This happens to a lot of teams. Cleveland this year is likely to be a gap year, although they're going to reshuffle the deck a little bit. We'll probably get to that. But if they had been a little bit closer to 500, I think that if you're that front office, you could talk yourself into believing you've got enough talent that with a piece or two and with the assets you have on hand, that you could actually make a splash and make a change. But the West is brutal. It's stacked. And they're just too many pieces away. And then the 6-19 does them no favors. But Ja's back. It's great. I think they still have a shot at the play-in. I mean, they're gonna win a bunch of games. You expect maybe Houston will drop off, but when you look above them, they need the Warriors to stay bad. And man, we're gonna talk about the Warriors because last night was extremely interesting. But they need the Warriors to stay bad. They need a few teams to help them out above them in the standings. But I think they're gonna win games at a higher rate than they have. They clearly are better with Ja, but I just think it's a little bit too late. Maybe if this had been a 15-game suspension, it doesn't tank their entire season. But they're in a 6.5-game hole on the Suns for the 10th seed right now. 6.5 games they'd have to make up, just to get into that conversation. So unless the bottom falls out for Houston, which is, it could happen. It's a young team, although they've been more stable with the veterans out there. I just don't know. It's going to be a tough road for them to hoe. Sidharth, he says you're right about Tyus being key. How do you recover from losing that caliber of an asset? It's funny to call Tyus Jones an asset because they certainly treated him like he wasn't. He's a high level backup point guard. I think that he's replaceable. They just didn't do it. And Marcus Smart has been hurt. Let's not forget, because it's easy to forget that Marcus Smart is actually on this basketball team. He's been injured pretty much the entire season. When he was out there, it's not like he looked great with them. So they're shorthanded. I mean, they were relying on Derrick Rose for a little while there. I think if this team had been fully healthy outside of Ja, they could handle this. But Steven Adams was also a late scratch for this season. Let's not forget. So they started out really behind the 8 ball, and then things just didn't go well for them. But, I'm with you, Sidhart. I think that, not getting a guy who can play in place of Tyus Jones, even if Ja's there, you need a good backup point guard because he gets dinged up as the season goes on. He misses, usually a few games here and there, and you need high-level point guard play. Monte Morris is a guy that I keep thinking about. He's sitting in Detroit doing nothing on a team that's going nowhere, and it doesn't seem like they want him. I feel like, Memphis could be a team that could go out and get that guy. I mean, he's just sitting there. He's a very good player. Rich Banks, yeah, Jai's back. This is actually, I'm glad that, just swinging back to the emotional part of this. It felt different to watch the Grizzlies because Ja was just there. He's an actual star in the league, and this is part of why I think this suspension was as harsh as it was. The NBA was gearing up behind Ja Morant. He was getting a massive push. Let's not forget that one of these instances, he was about to drop a signature shoe. Right? It was coming imminently. And this is a guy who had a huge push behind him, was seen as the face of the league. The Grizzlies were playing on Christmas Day last year in a marquee game. They're off Christmas this year, obviously. Miami snuck in there. But Ja coming back, the league is not at a lack for stars. They have stars everywhere. Tyrese Halliburton. And we saw the funny moment where the I'm not sure the guy's name who covers the Memphis Grizzlies, but is very clearly a Grizzlies fan. When he was talking to Ja in the press conference last Friday, saying, heard Tyrese Halliburton has moved above you. I heard that guy in New York, Jalen Brunson, has moved above you, which, hey, if you don't play, man, what have you done for me lately? But the league is not lacking in stars or star power. But Ja has a different vibe than these guys. Ja carries himself like a star. And the one thing that would have made last night perfect, the one thing that would have made his comeback absolutely just, and this is where, Sam, I want you to pay attention here. If it had been scripted, he would have caught a body last night. And Jonas Valanciunas is the perfect guy because Jonas Valanciunas gets dunked on and Ja didn't catch one. That's why I know either the script writers were like, all right, they'll never see this coming. We can't give him a dunk in this game. Or they didn't actually script it.
Hey, you can't have everything. You can't have everything, man. They gotta keep it a little bit on the down low. You can't just like make it that obvious that it's a script.
Marcus asked a question here. Does the horrendous start from the Grizzlies change your view of Jaren Jackson Jr., or do you think Steven Adams' absence is the key factor for Jaren not being a defensive player of the year candidate this year? This is a great question because, I have made the argument that since June, let's say June 1st, since Memphis was eliminated from last year's playoffs, has any player in the NBA had their reputation take as big of a nosedive as Jaren Jackson Jr.? He had an awful summer. The World Cup was terrible, and all eyes were on him. And, obviously our team over there was not very good, and he was a part of that. I mean, FIBA basketball requires you to play like a big man, and he just doesn't. I don't know if it doesn't really change my view. I just think that he is a piece that needs to be utilized a certain way, and that's not as the five man. I think you need to have another five out there. He's better as a help side guy. I mean, he makes the defense elite, but I don't think he can carry a defense on his own like a Rudy Gobert can. Rudy Gobert, and looking like normal Rudy Gobert again this season, he was a walking top five defense alone and with some of the worst defenders you could imagine when he was in Utah. And Jaren is not that guy. Part of that is discipline. Like I mentioned before, he fouls at an incredible rate. He tries to block every shot. He's constantly reaching. Part of the thing that makes him great is that he actually has the vision and the talent to get to a lot of these things, but it's also what holds him back. And then there's just style of play. I think that when you look at the way Memphis is defended, he is better used, and it also allows the other guys to rebound. If he's coming in as the helper and they're, Steven Adams, for instance, is getting to the box out and getting to the glass. So it's more that I don't want to saddle him with being a system player, but I think Jaren Jackson is just a true four. I think he is a legitimate NBA four, whatever that is. Like, I think that he is a four in the NBA. This is not one of these things like Chet Holmgren is a five. I think OKC did him a great service by just playing him at center right away because he's learning how to do it. Jaren, I don't think is a center. I think that his natural tendencies make him better as that four man so that he can roam a little bit. He defends really well on the perimeter, blocks shots really well from the perimeter. And also just I think that he raises the level of your defense coming in from outside of the play.
Do you think,
yeah,
Dave? Do you think he could
yeah.
be the second best player on a championship team?
Jaren Jackson, yeah, I do actually think he could be the second best player on a championship team. The issue is, can Ja Morant, like if we're talking about Memphis, can Ja Morant be the best player on a championship team? That is an interesting question. I think offensively, no question. No question. He scores at such a high rate. He gets to the basket. I mean, last night he shot 12 free throws. Let's not forget that was a huge difference for this team. They never put pressure on the basket like this without Ja. This makes a big difference for them. But Ja's defense is atrocious. It's atrocious. It's like Damian Lillard, but skinnier. I mean, his defense is just, it's not even a turnstile. It's an open door. So if he could defend a little bit better, I mean, I'm looking at like guys like Trae Young, who this year has probably played the best defense he's ever played in his basketball career, maybe since he was a peewee guy. But that's the question. So Jaren, I think, can be the second best guy because I think he can be a defensive player of the year level candidate on the right team, as we just saw him do. Oh man, Johnny Golden calling me out for going hard on the Pistons. Listen, man, I haven't even talked about the Pistons here today, and I don't know if I'm going to. We did hit them on Nerder. I think we broke our panic meter on the Pistons because I mean, we're not even panicking. We've seen this coming from a long way away. But when you lose this many games in a row, I'm not saying it. There's nothing I can say that's worse than the 30 losses in a row that they're going to get to. I mean, will they win a game before February 1st, Sam? The Detroit Pistons, have you looked at their schedule?
I
It's
have.
not, I don't think they've got a winnable game for a while, Sam. I'm starting to feel bad for them, not just the fans. Starting to feel bad for the players because they just aren't good enough. I think Asar Thompson is the one guy there that I would keep for sure. Cade, I don't know. I don't know. I need to see him around some talent. I just need to
Dave,
know
do you
what
know
he's
what
like.
the Pistons record was through 3 games into the season?
They were 2-1.
They were 2-1. That was a
They were.
winning team.
This is the thing. They were 2-1. Do you know how many games, Sam, off the top of your head, how many games have the Pistons won since they traded for James Wiseman?
It's 4, right? Am I incorrect? It's
Four
4. Yeah.
games. They've won 4 games since they. This is one of the most pitiful calendar years of basketball that any organization has put their fans through. It's so sad. And I mean, number one, I want to preface what I'm about to say by saying I never root for anyone to lose their job, especially when you're being paid by a billionaire. Okay, please get that money. I want anybody in that front office responsible for this team that has a guaranteed contract. I think they got to hit the road. There's no way that you can have Troy Weaver going into the trade deadline trying to, reshuffle the deck chairs when he's the one that put him here in the first place. It's too late. And right now, Monty Williams is the most powerful guy in that organization. He's got, 5.5 years left on that 6 year, almost $80 million contract that he was forced to take. The owner essentially forced him to take it by throwing so much money at him that he took a job that he didn't want in the first place. He was happy to not coach instead of coaching the Detroit Pistons and got paid enough and was given enough years to have the sort of organizational control and power that one needs to feel stable in the NBA. And Monty Williams is now set for life, unfireable. So you only have one move, and it's the guy that got him there anyway. So he's probably got to go. Carmelo defense was atrocious, but he's a first ballot Hall of Famer. Yeah, that's true. I mean, listen, man. Going back to the Ja comment about his defense, it's not about Ja. I mean, Ja is going to be a Hall of Fame player, and it's all about the offense. Like, let's not forget. I mean, he is elite at the offensive end. If you can be elite on one end, you can play. Although it's easier if it's the offensive end. These guys want to get paid, and the offense gets you paid. Ja Morant will. It doesn't make any sense financially for Ja Morant, who's 6 foot, 170 pounds, to break his body apart on the defensive end when he scores the way he does as easily as he does. And that's where all the money comes from. So I'm not hating on him. I'm just saying, like, it does, if he's not going to defend, or if he defends the way he has in the playoffs, as he has in the past, I think it's going to be a problem. Mark is asking about short, skinny guards. Can they ever be a true number one on a championship contender? See, this is something that we've talked about a lot. Like, Anthony Simons is one of these guys. Trae Young, Darius Garland is one of these guys. Um, we haven't seen it yet. I mean, Steph is about as close as you can get, and Steph is 6'4" and not skinny. Steph's one of the stronger, what we would consider point guard in the league. I mean, I think for a while there, when they were telling us that they were tracking it, I think Steph Curry was the heaviest deadlifter on the Warriors or something like that. When he was going through his ankle rehab, he did a bunch of stuff. And also, everybody can see that Steph is a little bit more jacked than those guys. We don't talk enough about guards filling out, in my opinion. We're if they're big and they're skinny, hey man, when this guy fills out, can he fill out? All these questions constantly floating through the air, especially during the draft process and the prospect scouting. But with guards, we just don't do it enough. I mean, Trae Young comes to mind. He's just kind of he's waifish. Ja Morant, clearly. Anthony Simons. I mean, these guys, and they also have never shown the ability to be able to stay on the basketball. The way that NBA offenses are allowed to screen is a big part of this. The amount of contact, the amount of movement, the way that they can actually move their body into a guy. You got Jonas Valanciunas out there screening Ja Morant. That's a maybe 100-pound weight difference, and not to mention just the size advantage that Valanciunas has there. And he's able to get away with some stuff that you really can't at other levels of basketball. So part of this is Ja is not good at it, but part of it is the rules work against you when you're trying to defend. So if you're starting with a natural disadvantage, a physical disadvantage, especially, it's an uphill battle, and it's not one really worth fighting because you get paid the more points you score. Here's another question from Sidhart. I'm loving these questions. Is Jaren's defense so good that he can be a non-shooter and rebounder and play the floor as a second option? Feel like the rebounding stretch five would change the outlook of the Grizzlies. I mean, yeah, the rebounding part especially. I just don't think Jaren's a non-shooter. This is he's been a pretty prolific shooter in his career. I think as a stretch four, he's been very solid. We're going to see him probably take off now that Ja's back out there. And one of the things, if you guys, I mean, you guys probably aren't going back and rewatching these games like I do, but I like to see what does it look like for Desmond Bane when he's playing with Ja. I went this morning and I looked back at it. You can see, man, Desmond Bane's gonna have some kinks to work out in his game, but I think that once Desmond Bane figures out, how to play with Ja again, that's going to improve Jaren's life quite a bit because Desmond Bane's spacing off of Ja creates a lot of open spots for Jaren, especially when Jaren can get the ball on the wing. His ability to attack. I mean, this is where, you know, coming out of the draft, I compared him to Tim Duncan because of his defensive IQ, but there's a lot of offensive Kevin Garnett to his game, especially off the dribble. And this is where I think I want to see more growth from Jaren is actually handling the ball, not turning it over, being able to put it on the floor, attack, but then make a read out of it. If there's shooters out there with him and Ja, there's no reason why he couldn't play the five if he's going to play offensively that way. They just got to figure out a way. Maybe it's Conchar. Maybe Conchar plays more, but they got to figure out a way to get more hands on the ball to attack the glass. And they're never really going to crash, I don't think, without Steven Adams out there. But they certainly can do much better than they have. Sam, did you happen to stay up and watch the Curry game last night? And I'm not even saying the Warriors Celtics game. It was really the Steph Curry game.
No, I lived it out in my dreams.
He's gonna live it out at the
I
the
did.
gym today.
I
Sam's got a big pickup game, and I'm gonna give him
I
some
got a
tips
huge
today.
pickup game, but I did hear Shaq's comments about Curry, possibly, or he said he should join the conversation to being the greatest of all time. What do you think, Dave?
Listen, Shaquille O'Neal knows ball. That's all I'm saying. I've been here for years, And here's my argument for Steph Curry being the greatest of all time. And this is all subjective. Everyone's going to have their own GOAT. I mean, I would say Michael Jordan, except for Steph Curry. And I would say this right now is the time when the NBA has the most talent. It's the hardest time ever to win. We've got more high end talent than ever before. Steph Curry has been the greatest player of his generation. His run, he has been the best player this whole time. And he's doing it the highest degree of difficulty, won 4 titles, unanimous MVP. Yeah, I think he's the GOAT. And part of this is he's finally kind of racked up enough time of service. He's played enough games. The longevity is there. I'm not really into and I mean, no disrespect to LeBron, but the 40,000 points he's going to score don't move me as much. I mean, what he's been able to do has been like physically incredible and obviously like averaging 27, 7 and 7 for 20 some odd years is crazy. But I just think Steph Curry's peak was higher. And so that's what I tend to think about. So, I'm glad that he's finally seeing it. And it's funny that it's Shaq because Shaq is the player that I maybe have compared Steph Curry to the most. When you think about the way that you've got a game plan for Steph Curry, It's very similar to the way you had to game plan for Shaquille O'Neal. The primary focus of your defense has to be where's Steph Curry at all times. Same with Shaq. Where's Shaq? Now, you need to keep Shaq out of the paint, but you can't because he's too big. You need to keep Steph Curry away from the ball, but you can't because he's too fast. Steph Curry changed the geometry of the sport in the exact same way, just opposite, away from the basket. So now you got to guard him 30 feet out. That opens up everything inside. His team has been able to flourish, his teammates. I mean, what kind of career does Klay Thompson have if he's not playing next to Steph Curry? I'm not saying he's not still a Hall of Famer. I don't know if he's this level of player, though. Steph makes his life
Dave,
easier.
I think you're talking about Steph the same way people talk about me on the pickup courts. That's all I gotta say.
Yeah, okay. All right. Sam Curry over there. Uh so I mean I just think yes, I Shaq definitely great way to get the discourse started. I've been saying this for like 2 years. Maybe I was early. I don't care. I'm an early adopter on this stuff. That game was crazy last night, Sam. Number one, we've written off the Warriors for about a week now. As soon as Draymond got suspended, we all just, I mean, and we were already teetering on the edge. At least I was. This team stunk. Draymond's out indefinitely, which people have forgotten what the word indefinitely means. It does not mean forever. I don't know if you know that, Sam. Sam constantly reminding me that he's Gen Z and I'm not, but I do know what words mean, and indefinitely just means
We still use indefinitely, Dave.
I know, but the discourse around indefinitely has been over the top. So Draymond goes out, and he's probably going to miss 2 or 3 weeks. And I think to myself, well, Draymond is the second best player on this team. They stink. And since then, I think Klay Thompson shot about 50%, and they just beat the Celtics, who are, in my opinion, they're in that championship tier. It's them in Denver right now. So huge win. Celtics do Celtics things down the stretch and just absolutely fumble the game in the fourth quarter. No offensive poise. Don't run plays really down the stretch. They get in their isolation ball. Jason Tatum had an atrocious game. Awful game. Jaylen Brown hits Steph Curry with the too small pose, and Steph Curry scores 20 points after that. And you just can't do that to Steph Curry. It's the last guy you want to make mad. He didn't come out of the game after it. And Steve Kerr normally pulls this guy out. Steve Kerr is the only thing that can stop Steph Curry. And he said, nope, you made him mad. I want to talk about that final shot because been a little overlooked, although the NBA account did catch up on it. Shout out to the NBA account. Does a good job trying to pay attention to fun plays in basketball. Chris Paul gets a rebound in a sea of giants. Incredible play. Chris Paul, by the way, down the stretch of that game was rebounding incredibly well. Chris Paul is about my height. Gets a rebound. Steph Curry is out of bounds in the corner doing this. Chris Paul sees it through the sea of giants, dribbles out to the almost to the free throw line to change the angle. Steph lifts. He throws the one pass he could possibly make through Jason Tatum and Derek White's arms over Drew Holiday. This pass is so underrated hard. If Sam, I don't know if you've watched the highlight of the pass. You got to watch the pass. This pass is one of the best passes I've seen this year. The entire process takes him about, 1.8 seconds to get the rebound, see Steph, dribble out, and throw a crazy jumping pass over the arms of Drew Holiday, one of the best defenders in the league. Jason Tatum and Derek White's arms, there's about a window this wide, and Chris Paul manages to throw it through it, and somehow Steph does something even more incredible by shooting one of the highest rainbow shots I can remember. I mean, you ever been in the gym, Sam, and you throw a shot like, I don't know, full court, and you hit the ceiling? You ever done that? You hit the scoreboard or whatever.
Yeah.
I thought he was going to hit the parabolic camera that goes over the court. That would have been an awful way for that game to end. But it was the highest. I need the sports science on this. I'm gonna pull out my glasses and see if I can look. I need the sports science on the height, the peak height of the arc. I feel like 5 years ago we would have known this within 10 minutes of the game ending.
But
Just an
Dave,
incredible shot.
speaking of the
A
gym
shot that
though,
only
I
Steph
feel
Curry could hit.
kind of bad for Derek White because it's like the first rule of pickup. It's like game on the line, it's game point. You gotta stick with the hottest guy on the court. Like that's the one rule that you cannot break in pickup. Like let anyone else hit the game winner. But I don't know. He just lost track at the end, I think.
It's basketball. The number one rule on defense, right? In basketball, stay between your man and the basket, right? That still applies, but you have to stay attached to your man. Derek White, someone freeze framed this and posted on Twitter. He looked at the ball. He got caught ball watching guarding Steph Curry,
But he was
and
lost. He was so
he
lost.
it was over. This again, you have to know where Stephen Curry is for 48 minutes a game. If he's sitting on the bench, you need to have eyeballs on him. He is a threat to score at all times, but especially in stuff like this. And then folks are going to talk about the Jason Tatum missed shot at the end of regulation. The math on that is the math on that works out in Boston's favor. Like this was a good shot by the math. You have a 100% chance of not losing if you put a shot up close to the buzzer. You don't want to try to drive or whatever because you don't want to commit an offensive foul. You don't want to turn over. And you go to isolation for the same reasons, right? You can dribble the ball fairly safely. Jason Tatum's pretty big. Jason Tatum is an okay three-point shooter, although very inconsistent because of his shot form. You have a 30% chance of winning on one shot. So as much as I would love it if they ran a play down the stretch, and I actually, especially the final shot, hey, run a play, great, cool. I can't argue because the analytics actually are dead on that. 100% chance of not losing. We take it to overtime and take our chances, or a 30% chance of a win. Not bad, and especially on the road, I'll take it. That being said, the 12 minutes leading up to that shot were the real problem. The Boston Celtics continue to fall apart in fourth quarters. We talked to Jay King the other day. We did our Christmas gifts for the Boston Celtics, and I said health. Health is the most important for this team thing for this team. That no Kristaps Porzingis in this game. He probably would have helped them down the stretch as a release valve. But I think Jay King nailed it. Poise in the fourth quarter, especially on offense, they go away from their offense. They don't run plays. And this has been an issue before Joe Mazzulla was the coach. It was an issue for Ime Udoka. It was an issue for Brad Stevens. And at some point, we're going to have a conversation about Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum and their responsibility for some of the fourth quarter failures of the Boston Celtics. I don't think we're going to have that conversation until the playoffs this year because they're just too good. They're 20-6 now that they lost to the Warriors. But at some point, and this might be the year, another playoff failure, especially after the contract that Jaylen Brown got, all the buzz Jason Tatum has, they're likely to be the best team in the East. Jason Tatum probably going to be on a bunch of MVP ballots. If they continue their history of fourth quarter failures in the playoffs, I think that we're going to have some serious conversations about those guys. Sam, I know your Magic kind of, they woke the dragon a little bit. I'd like to see the Boston Celtics awake against other teams in the fourth quarter. I just want to know what it looks like.
There's no competition like the Orlando Magic, Dave. Come on now.
I mean, it's true. It's true. That is true. They ran up the score. It was, they had to come back and had to get it back. But I just I think Boston's their issues are, you got to get healthy. You need Porzingis back. But you've got to commit to your principles. This is yet another year where we're saying the exact same stuff. Sam, I guarantee you could go back this time last year and there's me and Jay King talking about Boston's fourth quarter offensive struggles. Like I actually did a quick Google search just to see what kind of stories are out there. Oh, I saw stuff from Doc Rivers. So pre Jason Tatum. I mean, this is just, Is it illegal to run offense in the fourth quarter inside the Boston City limits? I don't know. We got to figure this out, Sam. Oh
The thing
man,
is, if you go back
Marcus,
a
this is a
year,
great
will you
Shaq
also
take, by the
hear
way. Just go ahead, Sam.
will
Sorry.
you also hear takes about Chet Holmgren looking like Corey Maggette?
He killed me with that. Hey, hot take. If Chet Holmgren was built like Corey Maggette, he would win Rookie of the Year for sure. Marcus makes a great point here about Shaq. Shaq knows ball, but because he's funny and sometimes mumbles, people don't take him seriously. The funny part, especially. The funny part, especially. There are people who, they'll think you're goofy if you don't take everything extra seriously. But yeah, Shaq knows ball for sure. Um, you
Dave,
know,
Dave, I got a question for you, Dave.
yeah.
Why do you think Steph Curry isn't talked about more in like the GOAT conversation as opposed to like other players like LeBron, you know?
Well, all right. So now here's an interesting question. Who else concurrent with LeBron has been talked about in the GOAT conversation? Nobody.
It's just MJ,
Nobody.
right?
It's no. You really only hear people talk about LeBron James. That's it. So I think that's a big part of it is that LeBron James, who clearly belongs in the conversation, clearly belongs in the conversation. But the weight of LeBron James tends to, I think, Steph is a little overshadowed by that because of the longevity. If Steph does this until he's 45, then I think that conversation becomes way more mainstream. But LeBron's, the fact that he was doing this for 6 years before Steph was even in the league, and then he had that incredible run where, what was it, 8 finals in a row that he went to, 9, 8, I think. Um, that's pretty unparalleled. But also the machine around LeBron has helped that quite a bit. There's a lot of it seems like there's a lot of investment in LeBron being the GOAT for a lot of people, which, we know how marketing works, but um, it's mostly that. It's what do the counting stats look like? The 39,000 points for LeBron. I mean, Steph is, I don't know where he is on the all-time scoring list, but not that high. So KD might be the guy who gets the most amount of respect from a what if standpoint. What if he hadn't missed time? What if he hadn't broken his foot that one year? What if he didn't have the Achilles? What if he had won in OKC? For Steph, it's just Steph has haters in a way that other players don't necessarily. There are smart basketball people who don't like Steph Curry because he shoots threes. They just he shoots threes and he shoots threes from deep and he has broken basketball, so we can't give him respect. Can't respect a jump shooter. And then I mean, part of it also he's a little small. There's the defensive part. Now he is an above average defender. Now he was awful when he first came in, but his peak as a defender nowhere close to any of the other three guys that are regarded as the best three ever: Kareem, Michael Jordan, and LeBron. So if I was making arguments against, it'd be that. But I think his peak is just so high that it doesn't matter. So that's why he's the GOAT. But I think that's why he's held out. But he shouldn't be. He absolutely shouldn't be. He's
Dave,
by
uh, uh,
far the best point guard ever.
speaking of what ifs though, just personally, what is like the singular most talented season you've seen from a player in NBA history, you think? Like where if
Okay.
they were able to replicate that season 10, 15 years, they would be undoubtedly the GOAT.
Yeah. I mean, Steph Curry's 15-16 season is, I mean, the 73-9 season, undeniably the most ridiculous that I've seen. I mean, how many fourth quarters did he play that year? Not that many. They were just dominant, and he was dominant. I actually caught him in a Phoenix game. He had 40 and three quarters. I took a friend because I hadn't seen Steph Curry before. I was like, oh, well, they're on a 20-game win streak right now. 40 and three quarters, one of the most effortless 40-point games I've ever seen. But he just, I think it's 15, 16 Steph Curry or 21, 22 Nikola Jokic, 22, 23 Nikola Jokic, neck and neck. Two really incredible back-to-back seasons from Jokic. Jokic's numbers on a single season basis is up there with anyone. Anyone. I think Jokic is one of the 20 best players to ever play already. Should be a three-time MVP. Has a good shot at winning another MVP this year because I think people realize that there was a mistake last year. But those two for sure. LeBron had an incredible, efficient season in the 2010, 2011, and 2011, 2012 seasons in Miami, and those were impressive. The 88 or yeah, 88, 89 Michael Jordan season comes to mind. Now, I was 8 years old when that happened, so I can't give you a full breakdown on it. I do remember it being pretty awesome, though. Those are my words in my notebook, my scouting notebook from back then. But yeah, I think the Steph Curry
Dave,
15,
going back
16
real
is the one
quick
that comes to
to
mind right away for me.
going back to the 2010-2011 season. So that's the year Derrick Rose won MVP. And in my opinion, Derrick Rose,
Should have
prime
been
Derrick
Dwight
Rose, is
Howard.
the greatest basketball player I've ever seen. I want to know your thoughts about it.
You think Derrick Rose 2010, 2011 is the greatest basketball player you've ever seen? Is that what you're saying?
It is it is by far the most entertaining basketball I've ever watched. Is it the greatest? I don't know, but by far the most entertaining basketball I've seen from a singular player.
I mean, he was special. And in a way that it used to mean, not the way that the internet says everything is special. He was actually special. He was totally different. He was so explosive, you know, a bit of a proto Ja Morant, but jacked. He he had muscle, so he wasn't getting shoved around so much. And then the defense that team played, and now Derrick Rose is not a great defender, but had great defenders around him, and he at least tried. Joakim Noah on that team was just crazy. But the stuff that Derrick Rose was able to do without much of a jumper, he just attacked the basket. I mean, Ja Morant is really a Derrick Rose clone to a certain degree. Just can knife through the paint. But that was by far an outlier season for him. I mean, not just from a health perspective, but also just efficiency. Like he was way more efficient than normal for that season. But he was not really the MVP that year. My MVP for that
To
year
each
was
their own.
Dwight Howard. Dwight Howard should have won the MVP that year. I mean, I just don't know what else he was supposed to do. Dwight Howard, disrespected Dwight Howard from your Orlando. I can't believe I'm the one defending an Orlando Magic player on this show, Sam.
There's a reason I'm an Orlando Magic fan right now and not a Dwight Howard fan. That's all I gotta say.
Yeah, well, that's okay. That's fair. What else we got happening? Here's
We got a
another
question
question
from
for
Marcus.
Marcus. Yeah. Are there any teams in the past similar to the Celtics team? Clearly the most talented team in the NBA, but with only one finals appearance and conference finals. I mean, probably the Oklahoma City Thunder, the Russ, KD, Ibaka Thunder. I mean, Harden was obviously there for the one finals run. But I would say that it's pretty close when you just look at the talent/youth. These guys are still young. They've just been together for a long time, and they've just been winning the entire time. I mean, that's the craziest part about this is we knocked the Celtics and we knocked Jason Tatum, but when you go back and you look at what Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown have done since they've gotten to the league as just basketball players, as team players. So they were second last season in the East, made it to the conference finals, made it to the finals the season before that. So one finals berth, but an Eastern, they lost in the first round in 2021, but a conference finals in 20, conference semis in 19. I mean, this is a team. Jason Tatum has never lost in the NBA. Now, when we typically think about NBA teams winning, we tend to say rings, championships. But for me, if you're consistently in the conference finals, if you're consistent, I mean, they made a finals, but I think they've got a good shot at getting back this year. Definitely a great shot at conference finals. But if you're consistently in the conference finals, I can't say that like you don't really have anything to show for it. That's hard to do. There's 30 professional teams trying to get there, and you make it to the final four. That's pretty good. It takes so much to get over the top in the NBA. I mean, look at the difference between the Nuggets with Jamal Murray and without Jamal Murray. And I know that's a big without, but look at the difference in how we just feel about them. With Jamal Murray, they feel inevitable. Without Jamal Murray and with the greatest player on the planet, who I just said is a top 20 guy who has put up 2 or 3 of the best seasons ever in NBA history, and it's not enough. I mean, this is the thing about Boston. I don't know if Porzingis makes a difference for them, but I at least want to see what it looks like come playoff time. They may have more to show for it than they do right now. But I think Tatum has been a good player. He's probably overrated. A lot of people like to put him in that top 5 conversation. I don't think I can do that with Tatum. He's the flaws are I think they're pretty easy to see. But he does defend at an incredibly high level. He's a great offensive player. I think he's like the 8th, 9th, 10th best player in the league. And he could be the best player on a championship team, in my opinion. But I can't say that they don't have anything to show for it. If this is as good as he gets, if he never makes it back to another finals, this guy has already had a pretty damn good career as a winner. They just win games, man. I mean, it's maybe the NBA is too easy, and it's just easy to manufacture a consistent conference finals, and it's difficult to get to the finals. But I don't think so, man. I think that Tatum and Brown, like together, have been really good. This is it's not quite Jordan and Pippen, but it's a similar sort of vibe with those two. I think they work well together and just a lot of high level play. So I wouldn't say they don't have anything to show for it. Um. Oh. Oh. Okay. Uh-oh. I mean, I think of Carmelo Anthony. I mean, of course it isn't. I mean, now I think of LaMelo Ball, but Carmelo is Mello. I almost, it's funny. My dog's name is Pippin, and I almost named him Mello because he's very chill. And this was after Carmelo Anthony. This would not have been after LaMelo. Carmelo Anthony is just so much cooler. Yeah, but LaMelo Ball, I don't know, man. Like I feel like LaMelo Ball likes the Joker a little bit too much for me to ever think of him as mellow. And I did you see the video of him leaving the Hornets arena in various cars? Yeah, that guy drives like an a-hole. I prefer Carmelo Anthony, who I think probably drives his Bentley like a gentleman. So yeah,
Open
I
to
think of Melo.
interpretation.
There's only one Melo, it's Carmelo Anthony. Is that all you got?
That's all I got. Let's get out of here, Dave.
All right. Well, we'll get out of here. Thanks to you folks who hung out. I think we're gonna try to do more of these. We'll see how they go. And I don't know if I'll be around again before the holidays are over. So celebrate Christmas, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, whatever the holiday may be that you do celebrate. And if I don't see you before the new year, enjoy your New Year's Eve and be safe.